Thank you very much indeed, and good morning, everybody. My task in the 19 minutes and 53, in the next 20 minutes is to talk about cloud computing and its impact on the effective governance of information. Now, cloud computing, as said by our chair, is here with us now. It's here with us from our Facebook applications to a whole range of other both corporate, user and government applications. It's essentially about the provision of a service delivered remotely, exploiting the network technologies, the internet in particular, that have become so ubiquitous in our daily lives. And it, in some ways, is a revolution, but as with many revolutions, it's actually based very much in existing and in not historic thoughts about how computers would change our lives and the impact it would have on us as organizations and as individuals. Clearly, cloud computing is in part a form or the latest manifestation of outsourcing. It gives you an organization the ability to obtain access to computer and communications resources, from processing and applications and utilities to infrastructure and storage capacity, as a service, rather than purchasing physical hardware and related services to locate in your premises and employ your staff and pay for your energy. You are essentially able to obtain those resources remotely. So similar to outsourcing, it provides many challenges for an organization in terms of cost savings. And as you'll be aware, not surprisingly, governments have seen the potential of cloud computing as a mechanism or a part of their strategy for not only information and communications technologies, but clearly I understand, rumour has it, that government's trying to save money at the moment, and cloud computing is clearly part of that strategy. The last Labour administration recognised it in its strategy it published earlier this year, and the current government had been talking about the potential for cloud computing as a mechanism for streamlining administration, for improving delivery of services during its time in opposition. So it's a central part of forthcoming ICT strategy. So from a governance issue, what concerns need we be worried about? Well, I've broadly classed them into three broad areas. One is data protection and privacy, and I know obviously you've already had the presentation for the Information Commissioner, but I will just say some additional issues about compliance with current law, let alone issues arising from potential changes to existing legislation. Data security, retention and ownership, and last but not least, law enforcement concerns. Before I turn to that, though, I just want to sort of again quickly review what constitutes cloud computing, and we're doing some research at Queen Mary at the moment looking into this topic, and we did one of these activities. You go out there and find out all the various definitions given to cloud computing, and you sort of mix up the words that are used by everybody and try and focus on some of those key issues that are of concern to people in a cloud environment, and we use that to produce this proposed definition, which I don't want to emphasize or go through in detail now, but it's something perhaps worth looking at because it's in your materials. But we're talking about location-independent access to computer resources, and this is one of the savings that clearly can come from outsourcing, but is enhanced in a cloud computing environment. You don't actually have to provision these resources. These resources are essentially available on demand, and it's this on-demand nature of cloud computing that makes it such a powerful tool to assist, if not replace, your existing IT infrastructure. In terms of market segments, we see three broad areas where cloud computing is becoming integrated into our information and communications strategies. One is, and primarily, software as a service, We want to get access to a range of different applications and utilities, but we don't have the in-house resource, the skills to actually obtain those resources in-house. Why don't we simply buy that application as a service online? We can use it as and when we want, rather than spend lots of money on licenses for software that is underutilized within the organization. Platforms as a service. Google Docs is an example of where you essentially not only have an application, a software service, but a platform within which various organizations can share access to documents, to amend documents, to record the process of evolution of particular policy issues. And again, we see it particularly being aimed at those that are developing applications for others, so software developers and small and medium-sized enterprises that need to participate in a network of suppliers or a supply chain where they are simply one part of a broad network of suppliers. And finally, infrastructure as a service. We don't want to spend the money on the machines that store and process our data. We can essentially get access to that remotely. And that diagram is simply designed to highlight the fact that cloud computer is not targeted at one particular market segment. It's not one particular type of service. It's a range of different products that have emerged into the market. Now, in terms of legal issues, the first point is to say, well, as cloud is not something revolutionary, it's more evolutionary. Likewise, the legal issues are not new so much as with much shift from a paper-based to an electronic environment, it's the challenges that these new sorts of activities place upon our traditional legal problems that gives rise to the particular challenges. And cloud computing does have some unique features or distinctive features which challenge our existing modes of operandi. In terms of data ownership, clearly there's the data that we utilize, but as many of us involved in this area recognize, not only the content of what we process is important to us, but also the metadata, the data about our processing activities from a governance perspective is often key, both in terms of regulatory compliance, in terms of evidence in the event of dispute or investigation, and legal proceedings. But as well as the data and the metadata, this collection of information provides opportunities to derive new types of value. Data mining techniques are becoming increasingly prevalent to better exploit the data that we have, the data that we share, to identify patterns of behavior, to identify emerging trends. And that gives rise to complexities about who owns the data, the metadata, data generated about our communications activities, and some of this new data that can be derived from the former. So we need to be clear about who owns which data. And as most of you will be aware, the governing law that primarily protects the ownership of data are the laws of intellectual property. And in that respect, we've noted a number of challenges raised by cloud computing in respect of ensuring that we protect ourselves both in terms of our ownership of the data that we generate, but also ensuring that we do not breach the rights of others. So customers may end up using services to host infringing material, which can expose the service provider or even the hosting provider to liability. And so again, being able to audit where data comes from, who owns it, who has rights of access and control over it, is a challenge which is made more significant in a cloud environment of shared resources. The service provider may use technology which is subjected to disputed IP rights. The classic example of that has recently come to the fore is Microsoft recently got told that it was not able to ship certain components of its Word application because a court upheld the rights of a third party to some of the intellectual property embodied within that application. And in a cloud environment, that may become more stark because you may not have traditional abilities to shift from one application to another.